And the Somalians should be out of here. They've destroyed our country. And all they do is complain, complain, complain. You have her.
At exactly 11:47 a.m. on a cold Thursday morning, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation stood before a packed press room in Washington, D.C., and delivered a statement that would shake the nation to its core. What we uncovered in Minneapolis was not just a drug operation. It was a criminal empire disguised as success. The numbers were staggering. Over 4,000 kilograms of pure cocaine, $730 million in laundered assets, 42 shell companies spanning 3 continents, and at the center of it all, a mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood of Minneapolis, Minnesota, a palace built on blood, addiction, and betrayal. This is the story of how a wealthy Somali-American power couple turned the American dream into a nightmare. How they built a cocaine empire that stretched from the Horn of Africa to the heartland of the Midwest. How they infiltrated banks, charities, law enforcement, and city government. And how the FBI and DEA brought it all crashing down in one of the most coordinated federal raids in modern history. But I need to warn you right now, what you're about to hear goes deeper than you think. Because this wasn't just about drugs, it was about power, control, and a system that was bought, rebuilt, and weaponized from the inside. Let me show you how deep it really goes. 4:32 a.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota. The streets are frozen silent. A thin layer of fog rolls off the Mississippi River and drifts through the downtown blocks. Streetlights flicker against empty sidewalks. The city is asleep. But federal forces are wide awake. Over 200 agents from the FBI, DEA, ICE, and Minneapolis SWAT have been moving into position for the past 3 hours. No sirens. No lights, just shadows and coordination. They hit 12 locations simultaneously. The main target, a sprawling estate on the southern edge of Lake Minnetonka, a mansion locals call the Palace. Marble columns, gold-trimmed gates. A private dock with 2 speedboats, security cameras on every corner, the kind of home that looks like generational wealth, old money, clean success. But tonight, federal agents know better. At exactly 4:32 a.m., the gates blow open. Flashbangs detonate across the front courtyard. SWAT teams pour through the entrance in tactical formation, moving like water through stone. Agents in black fatigues storm the main hall, shattering silence with commands and heavy boots on polished floors. Upstairs, the couple, Jamal Osman and his wife, Amina Farah, are pulled from their bed in silk pajamas. No resistance, just shock. Cold steel handcuffs snap around their wrists as they're led down the spiral staircase past oil paintings and crystal chandeliers. But downstairs, agents are finding something else. In the basement, behind a false wall disguised as a wine cellar, they discover a hidden vault. Inside, duffel bags stacked floor to ceiling, each one filled with vacuum-sealed bricks of cocaine. Pure white powder stamped with a crescent moon logo. Over 1,200 kilograms in this location alone. Maury teams hit a furniture warehouse in North Minneapolis. They breach the loading bay and find wooden crates labeled as artisan imports from East Africa. Inside, cocaine, another 800 kilograms. Another unit storms a luxury car dealership on the edge of downtown. In the back office, behind filing cabinets, they find a steel door leading to a soundproofed room. Inside, scales, cutting agents, packaging materials, and 600 more kilograms of cocaine ready for distribution. Across the river, agents raid a non-profit community center that claims to help Somali immigrants with housing and job placement. In the director's office, they find encrypted laptops, burner phones, and ledgers tracking drug shipments disguised as charity donations. By sunrise, the seizures are catastrophic. Over 4,000 kilograms of cocaine, $17 million in cash, 43 illegal firearms, and something else, something the agents weren't expecting. On a seized server in the mansion's private office, forensic techs find encrypted files with names, judges, city council members, police sergeants, border patrol agents, bank executives, and authorization codes linking every shipment, every route, every payment directly back to Jamal and Amina. This wasn't just a drug ring. It was a command structure, and the federal agents standing in that mansion basement realize they've just opened the door to something much, much bigger. 9:14 a.m., FBI Field Office, Minneapolis. Inside a secure forensics lab, analysts are tearing through the encrypted data pulled from the mansion servers. Lines of code scroll across multiple monitors. Financial transactions, shipping manifests, offshore wire transfers, communication logs, and then they see it. A master network diagram, code name, Operation Crescent Gate. It's a blueprint. A fully operational system designed to move cocaine from East African ports through European transit hubs into the United States via Minneapolis as the central distribution node. The couple, Jamal and Amina, weren't just traffickers. They were architects. They had built 42 shell companies across Minnesota, Kenya, Dubai, and the United Kingdom. Fake logistics firms, sham charities, restaurant chains, import-export businesses, art galleries, real estate holding companies. Every single one was a front. Money flowed through these companies in waves. Cocaine profits from street-level dealers were funneled into cash businesses, car washes, barbershops, grocery stores. Then digitized through cryptocurrency exchanges. Then cleaned through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. Then reinvested into legitimate assets like luxury condos, farmland, and tech startups. The scale was breathtaking. Analysts estimate the couple laundered over $730 million in just 4 years. But the worst part, the protection. Digital signatures on internal emails show direct coordination with compromised officials. A district court judge who delayed warrants. A senior police captain who leaked raid schedules. 3 ICE agents who falsified entry records for mules traveling with fake passports. A state banking regulator who ignored red flag transaction reports. One senior FBI analyst leans back from her screen and says it out loud. This isn't corruption, this is command-level collusion. Jamal and Amina had turned Minneapolis into a cocaine fortress. They controlled the flow. They controlled the protection, and they controlled the silence. Federal investigators realize they're not just dealing with 2 criminals. They're dismantling a parallel system, a shadow operation that functioned like a second government within the city itself. And the worst part, Operation Crescent Gate was only in Phase 2. According to the seized documents, Phase 3 was expansion into Detroit, Chicago, and Columbus, turning the entire Great Lakes corridor into a controlled cocaine superhighway. The lead FBI agent closes the file and looks at his team. We don't just arrest them, we erase this entire network. 6:48 a.m., Federal Command Center, Minneapolis. A massive digital map glows on the wall. Red markers pulse across Minneapolis, St. Paul, Duluth, and smaller towns throughout Minnesota and Wisconsin. Each marker represents a location tied to Operation Crescent Gate. Over 1,000 federal agents have been mobilized. FBI, DEA, ICE, DHS, ATF, U.S. Marshals, Minnesota State Patrol SWAT units, helicopters from the National Guard. Black Hawk units circle above the Twin Cities skyline. Armored vehicles roll through pre-dawn streets. This is not a raid. This is an eradication operation. At exactly 6:48 a.m., strike teams move. In South Minneapolis, agents storm a mechanic shop that doubles as a cocaine cutting facility. They find industrial mixers, 50 kilos of uncut product, and 3 cartel members trying to escape through a back alley. All 3 are tackled and cuffed within seconds. In St. Paul, a luxury townhouse registered under a fake name is breached. Inside, surveillance equipment, communication hubs, and financial records showing payments to corrupt officials. Agents seize hard drives and arrest 2 money launderers caught shredding documents. Near the Canadian border, a convoy of refrigerated trucks is stopped on Highway 61. The manifests say frozen seafood, but thermal scans show hidden compartments. When agents open the trailers, they find 300 kilograms of cocaine packed inside false freezer walls. In downtown Minneapolis, a high-rise penthouse owned by one of the couple's shell companies is raided. Agents find Art Deco furniture, designer clothes, and a safe containing $2 million in cash, gold bars, and encrypted USB drives with client lists and distribution maps. Across the metro area, 12 more properties are hit in the same hour. Stash houses, front businesses, safe houses for mules, meeting locations for street dealers. By noon, the damage to the network is catastrophic. Over 6,000 kilograms of cocaine seized in total, 34 arrests, 42 bank accounts frozen, shell companies dismantled. Properties seized under federal asset forfeiture laws. One federal agent says it best: the underworld took more damage in 6 hours than in the last 6 years. But the operation isn't over. Because now, investigators are going after the system itself. 2:37 p.m., FBI Internal Affairs Division, Minneapolis. Agents sit in a conference room surrounded by printouts, spreadsheets, and digital timelines. They're no longer hunting traffickers, they're hunting traitors. The seized servers revealed something chilling. Over 24 law enforcement officers, border agents, and court officials were on the couple's payroll. Payments ranged from $5,000 to $50,000 per month. In exchange, these officials provided early warnings about federal investigations, altered patrol routes during cocaine deliveries, delayed search warrants, and falsified evidence logs. One Minneapolis police sergeant accepted $78,000 over 18 months to ensure certain neighborhoods were never patrolled during late-night deliveries. His patrol grid was deliberately redrawn to create blind zones where cartel mules could operate freely. A Customs and Border Protection agent at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport received monthly payments to flag and delay inspections on incoming freight marked with specific codes. Over 3 years, she allowed at least 40 shipments containing cocaine to pass through without scrutiny. A district court clerk leaked sealed indictment information to a burner phone linked directly to Amina Farah. Every time the DEA was close to an arrest, the targets vanished hours before the raid. Federal investigators describe it as a parallel enforcement system, a second police force, one that didn't serve the public, one that served the empire. Honest officers who worked alongside these traitors feel sick, betrayed, angry. One veteran cop breaks down during an internal interview and says, "I thought we were brothers." Turns out some of them were working for the enemy the whole time. Within 72 hours, federal agents arrest 9 active law enforcement officers, 3 court employees, and 2 ICE agents. Charges include racketeering, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The FBI makes it clear in a public statement: the badge will be rebuilt from the ground up, and anyone who sold it will answer in a federal courtroom. But this story doesn't end in Minneapolis. When analysts dig deeper into the financial web, they realize the couple's network wasn't just local, it was continental. Shipping logs show that cocaine entered the United States through 3 primary routes. First, from Colombian producers to Kenyan ports, hidden inside shipments of coffee beans and textiles. Then from Kenya to European hubs in Rotterdam and Hamburg, where it was repackaged. Finally, from Europe to the US through air freight and maritime containers marked as furniture, auto parts, and agricultural goods. Once in Minneapolis, the cocaine was distributed across the Midwest using a network of long-haul trucking contractors, many of whom had no idea what they were really transporting. Manifests were falsified. Weigh station inspections were timed to avoid detection. Routes were adjusted in real time using encrypted apps. At peak capacity, the network could move over 800 kilograms of cocaine per week without triggering a single federal alert. Investigators also uncover a disturbing secondary operation: human trafficking and migrant smuggling disguised as refugee resettlement assistance. The couple's nonprofit claimed to help Somali immigrants find housing and work. But in reality, it was used to recruit vulnerable people, new arrivals with no documentation, no money, and no support system, and forced them into drug courier roles. Some were trafficked across state lines. Others were held in debt bondage, forced to pay off fabricated fees by working as mules. One federal prosecutor calls it modern slavery wrapped in the language of charity. The final file agents discover is titled Phase 3, Continental Expansion. It outlines plans to replicate the Minneapolis model in Detroit, Chicago, Columbus, and Milwaukee. Each city would have its own front businesses, its own corrupted officials, and its own distribution cells. Together, they would form an unbreakable cocaine corridor across the Great Lakes region, moving product from coast to coast without interference. It was a vision of a shadow nation, a criminal state operating within the real one. A system designed not just to evade law enforcement, but to absorb it. One FBI director says it in a closed briefing. They weren't just building a drug empire. They were redesigning the system itself to make the empire permanent. But here's the thing about power. It doesn't always need violence. It doesn't always need fear. Sometimes all it needs is silence and ambition. Jamal and Amina didn't look like criminals. They looked like success. They dressed well. They donated to local causes. They smiled at charity galas. They shook hands with city leaders. And no one asked where the money came from because the money was clean, or at least it looked clean. And that's how empires are built. Not with guns, not with threats, but with polish. With lies dressed as legitimacy, with corruption that looks like opportunity. But here's what they didn't count on: the federal agents who spent months watching, listening, tracking, building the case brick by brick, the honest officers who refused to look away, the analysts who followed every dollar until the whole system unraveled. And when it all came down, it came down hard. Jamal Osman and Amina Farah now face federal charges including conspiracy to distribute cocaine, racketeering, money laundering, bribery of public officials, human trafficking, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise. If convicted, they face life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Their mansion seized, their businesses shut down, their accounts frozen, their empire erased, but the cost of what they built is still being counted. Every kilogram of cocaine they moved destroyed lives, families torn apart by addiction, overdoses in hospital emergency rooms, mothers burying sons, communities hollowed out by violence and fear, the fentanyl crisis, the heroin epidemic, the meth that turns neighborhoods into war zones. It all flows from operations like this. From people who saw suffering as profit, who saw desperation as opportunity. And that's why this story matters. Because this isn't just about one couple in Minneapolis. It's about what happens when organized crime infiltrates the system. When corruption becomes normal, when power goes unchecked. It's a warning. If you're still watching this, tap the like button so more people see this story. Share it, comment, expose, if you think corruption like this needs to be dragged into the light. Because the only way we stop this is by refusing to stay silent. And power doesn't need permission. It just needs silence. And the moment we stop watching, the moment we stop asking questions, the moment we stop demanding accountability, that's the moment the empire rebuilds. So stay awake, stay aware, and never stop asking who's really in control. Because the answer might surprise you.